In today's video, I'll tell the story of Bryce Weiner, a man who defied all odds to rescue his 14-year-old daughter, who was kidnapped. After being turned down by the authorities, Bryce didn't sit back and decided to take matters into his own hands. He then embarked on a journey that cost him his marriage, his job, and even led to him suffering from a mental disorder. Stay with me until the end to hear this story that feels like a movie plot. It all began in August 2010 in California. Bryce lived in a quiet town in a very peaceful neighborhood. You know those calm suburban areas where the most serious thing that can happen is a fight between the neighbors' dogs? Well, that's where Bryce lived with his family. The town in question is Goleta, located in Santa Barbara County with a population of almost 30,000 people. On August 22, 2010, Bryce's 14-year-old daughter went out for a bike ride around their peaceful neighborhood. However, hours passed and the girl didn't return home. Her bike was found a few hours later, abandoned in a park. Searches were conducted in the area, but no sign of the girl was found. Now, I need to clarify something. In some sources, Bryce's daughter is listed as Courtney Nicole Weiner, while in others she's listed as Maggie Grace Weiner. I honestly don't know her real name, but from here on I'll refer to her as Courtney. That's because most sources list her as Courtney. Even the social media page Bryce later created is under that name. So following the logic, it's most likely her true name. Immediately after his daughter's disappearance, Bryce contacted the authorities, providing photos and a full description of what she was wearing that day. Several searches were conducted in Goleta and other towns in Santa Barbara County, but the police found no trace of the girl. When reviewing surveillance footage from the route Courtney took on the day she disappeared, the police discovered that she had met with an older man. This man appeared to be between 25 and 35 years old. The police spoke to people who were near the location where Courtney went missing, and they confirmed that the girl had met with an older man in the same park where her bike had been found abandoned hours later. These witnesses said that Courtney didn't seem to be coerced or threatened. It was as if she and the man had been friends for a while. Based on this information, the police decided to check Courtney's electronic devices. They examined her computer and cell phone, which she had left at home. That's when they discovered that Courtney had been talking to an older man for several months. Among the conversations, the police found that they had arranged to meet on the very day she disappeared. The man, who was originally from Mexico, was writing to Courtney saying that he loved her and couldn't wait to meet her in person. The girl, who was only 14 years old, fell for his talk and didn't realize the danger she was in. Bryce and his wife, who had no knowledge of these conversations, were shocked and surprised by what the police had uncovered. That's why I believe it's so important for parents to check who their kids are talking to online. Nowadays, there are many ill-intentioned people out there just waiting for an opportunity to act. Parents, monitor your kids. It could save their lives. After the police examined Courtney's electronic devices and reviewed all the conversations, they concluded that the girl hadn't been taken against her will, but had left on her own accord. The police also took into account witness reports, which stated they had seen Courtney with the man and that they seemed to be friends. Because of this, the police didn't issue an abduction alert. Instead, they classified the case as if the girl had simply run away because she wanted to. This ended up making the situation seem less severe than it actually was, which limited the assistance from other authorities. Had the police classified the case as an abduction from the start, the California Highway Patrol, the FBI, and the State Department would have been alerted and helped with the search, which could have increased the chances of Courtney being found and safely returned to her family. A few days later, through the investigations, it was discovered that Courtney had crossed the California-Mexico border with the same man she had met. This information left the family desperate, as they knew it would now be much harder to bring her back, since she was in another country. The searches and investigations continued by California authorities, but according to Bryce himself, everything seemed to be done with reluctance, and no results were achieved. In the end, the authorities concluded that Courtney had gone to Mexico on her own, and that there was nothing more they could do, closing the case. Bryce was deeply frustrated. He felt abandoned and decided that even if the authorities weren't going to do anything more, he wouldn't sit back and do nothing. He had no idea how to conduct an investigation on his own, but he began studying the subject and using every resource he had available at the time. Bryce was a software developer with decades of experience, having worked for companies like Thomson Reuters and Lockheed Martin. He had always been very active on social media and firmly believed that they could be used to accomplish something big. That's when he thought of using them to help search for his daughter. Bryce created a social media page called Courtney Weiner, Wish You Were Here. On this page, Bryce began sharing information about his daughter, describing what she was like and what she enjoyed. He believed that this information could help someone recognize her if they saw her anywhere. Bryce also started sharing updates on the case and asked anyone with valuable information to contact him directly. While Bryce did everything he could to try to find and recover his daughter, Courtney, who was more than 3,000 kilometers from her home, was subjected to all kinds of violence you can imagine. She was deprived of her freedom, constantly watched, only allowed to eat when authorized, unable to communicate with others without permission, and yes, she was used as a toy by numerous evil men. What this girl went through is extremely difficult to describe, and even if I could, as some of you already know, I can't do that here. Bryce continued his fight to bring his daughter back. However, the months went by and no leads on Courtney emerged. Despite this, the determined father didn't consider giving up and kept up his search even with all the odds against him. Bryce needed resources to fund his investigation and parallel search, and as you can imagine, it wasn't cheap. Fortunately, he had mined 150 bitcoins sometime earlier and sold them when their value increased. This provided him with a substantial amount of money, which he used to fund his own investigation and search efforts. In a later interview, Bryce said that some of his friends, who had also mined bitcoins and sold them, used the money to invest in startups, stocks, or even travel to enjoy life. He, however, spent most of the money on his own rescue operation to, as he put it, bring back his most precious possession, his daughter. Nearly a year after the kidnapping in 2011, Courtney managed to contact her father. This was only possible after the girl managed to access a cell phone with internet without her captors knowing. She then typed her own name into Google and found the page that Bryce had created about her kidnapping. Courtney was able to send messages to her father through this phone, and they started communicating. At first, Bryce Weiner thought it was someone trying to prank him, making a cruel joke. But after asking for a photo as proof, he saw that it really was his daughter. Bryce was overjoyed, still not fully believing that his daughter was apparently okay and that he was talking to her after all this time. Bryce asked his daughter if she knew where she was, but she didn't know the exact location, which of course made things harder. In the following days, father and daughter continued to communicate through email as it was safer. Bryce asked Courtney to send him photos of the area she was in to see if he could identify her location. Courtney had difficulties. She had to do this without anyone seeing, and she couldn't just ask someone. Still, the girl managed to send some photos to her father, and it was through these photos that Bryce identified where his daughter was. Courtney was in Coyote Peck, a municipality with just over 40,000 residents located in the state of Mexico. Yes, Mexico has a state called Mexico. From Goleta, the city in California where Courtney was kidnapped, to Coyote Peck, it's more than 2,000 miles. Now that Bryce knew where his daughter was, all he had to do was go to the authorities so they could rescue her safe and sound. However, something strange happened here that I'll try to explain. According to some sources, authorities had access to the emails that Bryce exchanged with his daughter during the time they communicated. In these emails, Bryce supposedly mentioned that he would contact the FBI and the State Department to have her rescued by trained agents, but for some reason, Courtney supposedly told him that it wasn't a good idea, that it was better not to involve the authorities. I don't know why the girl would say this, but it's what I found in my research for this video. We can speculate that maybe she was being coerced into saying this, that her captors discovered she was communicating with her father and forced her to say such a thing. Or maybe she was afraid that an armed confrontation might occur and result in the deaths of people she cared about. We could also mention Stockholm Syndrome, which is a psychological reaction where the victim of a crime develops feelings of affection for the perpetrator. This is a response from the brain to tense situations, such as kidnappings, domestic violence, and other high-risk situations. Of course, all of this is speculation. I really don't know why Courtney didn't want American authorities involved in her rescue. When the police and other authorities saw the emails exchanged between father and daughter, They concluded once again that Courtney was in Mexico by her own choice, and therefore there was nothing more they could do. Bryce once again felt abandoned and told himself he wasn't going to give up. He then told the police that he would go rescue his daughter himself, while the officers told him he was crazy and that it was an impossible mission. In the following months, Bryce started to come up with a plan to go after his daughter. He didn't know anything about Mexico and knew that the cost of this operation would be high. He invested a lot of time and resources into this and began thinking about the best strategy to rescue his daughter. All of this took time. Bryce and Courtney continued to communicate, but as time passed, Bryce saw that things were much more difficult than he had imagined. So, 2 more years passed, making it 3 years since Courtney was kidnapped. In 2013, Bryce decided that it was the right time for him to go to Coyote Peak and find his daughter. He calculated that the journey of more than 3,000 kilometers could be done in 2 days, or 3 at most. However, the adversities were much greater than Bryce could foresee, and the trip lasted more than a week. During his journey, Bryce passed through various types of hostile terrains, including areas controlled by the Sinaloa cartel. To make his journey even harder, Bryce didn't speak any Spanish, so he came up with the idea of disguising himself as a deaf beggar. That way he could communicate only through signs and avoid drawing attention to himself. Bryce had lost contact with his daughter a few days before heading to Mexico to rescue her. Thus, Courtney didn't know that her father had come after her in Coyote Peak. Just days before Bryce was supposed to arrive at his daughter's location, by coincidence, Courtney took advantage of a moment of distraction from her captors and escaped in the middle of the night. Barefoot, Courtney ran to the U.S. Embassy and told them everything that had happened. The embassy staff was able to contact Bryce, not knowing that he was closer than they had imagined. Bryce reached the U.S. Embassy in Mexico in less than a day, and finally, after 3 years, he was reunited with his daughter. That, without a doubt, was one of the best moments of his life, and now he could take his daughter home. Bryce later said that the reunion was a moment of victory against all those who doubted him, including authorities and acquaintances who called him crazy or said it was impossible. All of this happened at the end of 2013, specifically in November. Bryce even posted a picture with his daughter on his social media with the following caption: "To everyone who gave up on me, abandoned me, said I should be ashamed, called me crazy, or said it was impossible, you were wrong." According to sources, the trip back home for father and daughter was peaceful and without major issues. The only problem they encountered was at the border between Mexico and the United States, as Courtney had no documents and was still a minor, being only 17 at the time. However, it seems that thanks to the U.S. Embassy, this was resolved, and they both managed to cross the border. In the United States, according to sources, Bryce faced some bureaucratic issues due to matters involving his daughter, but this was sorted out over time. In a statement, Bryce said that his daughter's kidnapping destroyed his marriage, led him to quit his job, and caused him to suffer from post-traumatic stress until 2016. In some sources I used for my research on this case, I came across comments from people who followed everything, saying that the story resembles the plot of the movie Taken. In the movie, the protagonist, played by actor Liam Neeson, has his daughter kidnapped and goes to extreme lengths to bring her back. The movie is very good, and if you haven't watched it yet, I recommend it. Additionally, the film has 2 sequels, offering guaranteed entertainment. I also saw some people joking about how the name Bryce Weiner is similar to Bruce Wayne, the real name of the superhero Batman. Today, Bryce leads a peaceful life with his family. As for Courtney, as far as is known, she is doing well and lives in a small town. 10 years after the rescue, Bryce shared a photo on his social media with her, which is the one you see on your screen. Asked about his future plans, Bryce Weiner mentioned that he intends to write a book titled The Tales of El Diablo Gringo. In this book, he plans to detail his entire journey, from his daughter's abduction to her rescue. On some forums I visited while researching the case, I found comments stating that some producers had contacted Bryce with the intention of turning his story into a film. I'm not sure if this is true, as I didn't find any further information on this, but I believe the story would make a great movie. But what about you? What did you think of this story? Do you think it would make a good movie? Would you do the same for your son or daughter? Or would you wait for the authorities to handle it? Well, thank you so much for watching until the end. and I'll see you in the next video. Well, folks, that's it. Tell me here in the comments what you thought of this story. I'll be signing off now. Thank you very much for watching me until the end. A big hug, and see you next time.